should make you big. Okay. Let's make sure we're all live and get our social on. Live.
So y'all been keeping up with Clone Wars?
No.
I have not. I got distracted because I got the CBS Live Access, whatever it's called, for like a month for free, so I've been trying to watch the Star Trek stuff. Which I'm sure is somehow blasphemous for what we were just talking about, but I do enjoy Star Trek as well.
Well, they just started last Friday the Siege of Mandalore arc, which I would highly recommend.
I should probably
It was a lot of fun.
not have the COVID-19 thing on the background. Donk. There we go. That's what I need right there. I'll take that off in a second because my chair's being funky. But we'll at least start to stream and let people enjoy that.
Yeah, I can see the stream.
Yeah. Okay, let me get the social going, and we'll get started.
So, good news for the stream is I've ordered a new microphone finally.
Oh.
Because we're doing a lot of this stuff with church right now in small group, and it's really not fun to hand a headset back and forth to talk. And so I ordered one, so I'm going to be losing the headset here in probably 2 weeks when the microphone comes in. Unfortunately, Amazon Prime is not 2-day shipping right now.
No, it is not. There we go.
You're lucky if you get it in 8 days.
Depends on what it is.
Yeah, I pre-ordered a book and I was like, you know what? I would normally do this for the day of, but I think I'll just do it as a Kindle. Because, if it shows up the day of, that's not too bad. Might as well save $8 and get it the day of.
Yeah.
And new link. This is all the good stuff. For those of you who are with us right now, I think just a few of you, I hope you have your fantasy moments ready to share with us. We realized pretty quick that we would have to do this individually because without having the same teams, then it didn't make any sense for us to talk about like the biggest fantasy moments in fantasy history because they would all be different for us depending on if we had those players on our team. And so that's when we decided that we needed to let everybody get involved in talking about their
Unless we
favorite
just talk
moments.
about greatest 1 week surprises.
I mean, I haven't done that research, so that's not going to be as fun for me. But it like dangerously starts to tread that line of just general MLS topics, which I mean is fine, but okay, there's that. We got the Reddit, we got the Twitter. I think that's all that we do the social on.
Yeah, that's kind of why I was looking at like what we could, or some of those highlights, like the 200-point week or whatever. Because it goes beyond just our personal stuff and it's big achievements or whatever. That honestly, I didn't know that we'd ever see that hit.
I mean, the 200-point weeks, but also 300-point players. I mean,
Yeah, and see, that's another good one to throw out there. Just like different milestones that we may or may not have seen it. Have we ever had a double game week 5-goal performance? I know we've never seen the double hat trick yet, but I thought we had a 5.
The double hat trick. All that and more on tonight's episode of the MLS Fantasy Insider Podcast.
Shannon, am I still super echoey? If I talk a little closer to the mic, is it still bad?
Yeah, Shannon, if you could tell us who and how bad.
Reed, are either of you guys getting an echo from me?
I'm not, but I should probably put on my headset. Maybe that would
Oh,
make
well,
it better.
that might... we might be getting the echo from you, then.
Maybe you are.
I think Zoom has a pretty good echo reduction feature for us, but I'm not sure if it does it through the stream.
All right, Reed put on his headset.
Hey-oh, here we go.
Shannon, Is that better, Shannon?
I only sound
I keep-
okay? I only sound okay?
Oh,
Oh
that's
my
normal.
gosh.
There's
Oh
nothing
my
to do with
gosh. That's because the Death Star is destroying my head. That's what's
that. Well, it
what's
destroys a
going on.
lot of things.
It does. Let's get rid of that. Back to none. There we go.
Good now.
All right, are we ready to
Fantastic.
get this started? Thanks, folks. All good. Yeah, my bad there. All right, here we go. Getting the intro for all the podcast stuff, and then we'll jump right into what we have planned for tonight. Hello and welcome everyone to episode 11 of the MLS Fantasy Insider Podcast, our Week 6 suspension episode. This episode is brought to you by League Suspensions, a time when everyone becomes a fantasy fan. Actually brought to you by MLSFantasyBoss.com and the amazing Patreon group of the MLS Fantasy Insider Podcast. You guys rock so much all the time. Big hearts. Big hearts to you all. Love. I'm your host, Reed Connolly from MLSFantasyBoss.com, and I am joined tonight by my partners in fantasy, Michael Denton and Blaine Riffle. How you fellas doing?
Good.
Doing well. Better than my COVID beard. So
Yes. For those of you who are listening, you'll need to go check the MLS Fantasy Boss YouTube account if you don't regularly check or join us for our live streams. Mike is grooming himself right now into the video camera. He is rocking a beard due to his quarantine, and both Mike and Blaine have put up virtual backgrounds with taking advantage of the Zoom technology. Mike is rocking some, what is that, the LSU locker room?
I think it's the LSU entrance, the LSU trophy room.
LSU. Oh, okay.
That shiny thing.
Okay, yeah, I couldn't see the trophy. Like I could see just the right side, my right of Mike's, which looks sort of like Cubbies, and so I thought it was, but it was clearly LSU with the color scheme. And Blaine is rocking one of the MLS Fantasy Insider graphics that we have that makes it look like a studio. It's not really a studio since we're all in different places, but I did have a Death Star, and I decided I didn't like the way that works, so I'm just back to my normal background in my little geek retreat right here. So check it out if you haven't. It's just some fun visuals this week. So just head over there to YouTube real quick and give that a look see. But if not, just enjoy the episode. As always, I am just going to remind everyone that the reason we're still doing this is because I know that everyone, in at least the vast majority of people, are quarantined and they're not able to go out to work or out to have a normal just experience of life and socializing. And we just wanted to do our part during this time. It would be really easy to just not do anything and say, hey, games aren't going on. There's clearly no fantasy going on, so we're just going to stop. But we don't want to. We want to help contribute to the mental well-being of everyone, which is equally as important as your physical and then just health well-being right now. But that mental health well-being, I mean, everyone should be healthy at home and doing what they can to be safe. And we just want to help you get through that. And if it's just with 45 minutes to an hour. there's the joke itself. When do we ever hit the 45 minutes to an hour mark? But even if it's just a little bit of time to just relax with some silly talk about soccer or fantasy stuff, that's what we want to do, our little part to help during this time right now. So thank you so much for listening, and we hope you guys enjoy our show about the biggest fantasy No, that's not it. We're not doing that, are we? No, we decided not to do that. So that was, Blaine, what was your idea last week, which is sort of our topic this week?
Like a top 10 fantasy moments or big moments in the fantasy game that we can remember, and a lot of those ended up being pretty personal, like personal achievements, which is understandable. There were some other ones that we threw out there that we've kind of been discussing. I just want to throw this out there because we have to, and that's the 44-point double game week. Like,
I have a personal story. Don't be taking.
I feel like you're treading on stealing, Blaine.
But,
No.
But that's kind of become fantasy legend. But there's stories like that. You only have to say a few words and people know what you're talking about on some of those. And so just those highlights that we've got, and everybody's got stuff different. So chat, if you have those big moments, throw them out there for us, because we'd love to talk about them, discuss them a little bit, because everybody's got their own little fantasy stories that they love. But we like to share some of those, and then just share some of the like major milestones that we may or may not have kept track of over the years.
Yeah, that was the problem that we came up with, is that it is so personal. Like, did you have so and so player on your team when they went off? If so, that's a great fantasy moment for you. But I didn't have that player on my team. I actually have a horrible track record of having the hat trick players on my team, and so it should be more readily just standing out in my mind than it is. But we started thinking this shouldn't just be us giving you a top 5 or a top 10 list of our favorite fantasy moments, because we want to hear your favorite fantasy moments as well. And so I sent the message out on Twitter, and I got a few responses from people. So thank you so much, everyone who participated in this little exercise that we did. And if you're listening to us right now in chat, hello. Thank you for joining. We want to know your fantasy moments as well. So we'll go through a few. I'll give you a cue. You can start sharing your moments. We're going to read them, but then we're also going to sort of talk about the surrounding circumstances around those moments and just some related events that they remind us of. And these don't have to be good. Let me just throw that out right there. Some of these could be horrible, crushing defeats. If you want to, there we go. If you want to throw those out there too. I mean, it's the big chances flubbed version of fantasy moments is what it is. So RIP that stat. So that's the goal tonight. So happy that you could be with us. So happy everyone who's in chat with us right now. 6, please do share this on social. I got that going right before the episode started. You may have noticed, but if you are listening right now in chat, please give us a share and try to get people to come. Yes, Adam, I got yours, and they are on my list for things that we're going to talk about right now. So, but let's just let Mike and Blaine go first. Mike, since Blaine sort of spilled the beans some, let's go ahead and do the infamous 44-point double game week.
Yeah, so I feel like I should go with this one because I was actually in a head-to-head with Jason that week. And the important part to know about this is it's a double game week, and it's not just like a little tiny double game week. I think 4 teams are involved. I'm pretty sure the 4 teams involved are Chicago, both New Yorks, and Toronto. Jason captains David Accam. I'm his head-to-head opponent. David Accam gets a red card like 20 minutes into the first game. His captaincy is ruined. And then I think he has a bunch of New York City players. New York City rotates the first game against Toronto. Like Patrick Mullins plays against Toronto. I think he has an assist. So, Patrick Mullins moments. Great week. Then he has New York City players. I have mostly Red Bulls players. This is important because the game is a slightly infamous game in which New York Red Bulls score 7 goals against no goals for the New York City Mighty Pigeons. So I'm sitting there watching Jason's team being destroyed. Almost as bad as my favorite MLS team being destroyed. Kind of like, the GIF where it's like, like, well, my team's getting destroyed, but, Sasha's getting an assist and BWP's got a hat trick. So I captain BWP. So at least I'm getting fantasy points out of this. So I'm like crying and smiling at the same time. So much pain, so much joy in fantasy. Literally the only joy I got was fantasy in Jason's failure eclipsing the failure of my own team. But yeah, I mean, literally everything that could go wrong went wrong. Your captaincy's gone. Your other players get in a blowout to end all blowouts. It was just a perfect storm. I don't think we've ever seen it again. I mean, sometimes even Andrew Wiebe, when he doesn't say his 44 points.
Yeah, I think that's the only person who could even begin to challenge for the lowest double game week score of all time. I mean, it was going to be fun this year with the 2020 season, which we still will get some back to test this new rule set out. But having the split double game weeks was really going to put a different spin off everything. But just the way double game weeks are the ultimate because MLS moment within MLS fantasy lore, clearly, but of all MLS, just because of the crazy rotations and just the weird things that happen. How many times during a double game week has own goal come out with the highest scoring points during a game, or own goal come away with the winning points, and you're just like, oh my gosh, my team was ruined by that random own goal, which was not own goal, but last year's Sporting Kansas City team, that was basically almost every game that they played early on when they were winning was a horrible fantasy moment in the last like minute of stoppage time. That was you. It was just it was horrible. So pretty much like right there, Blaine, stamp it. Every Sporting Kansas City game from 2019 in fantasy.
Oh yeah, it was bad. It was bad. Like it was bad for fans too, but it was bad in fantasy.
See, I remember, I don't know if this was last year or the year before, where I was at a wedding, and it was a wedding for one of my wife's coworkers, so I didn't really know anyone there. I'm just like checking my phone while drinking free drinks from the open bar, and just being like, "Oh no, Sporting Kansas City blew a goal! No, no! Why did they blow the clean sheet?" Madranda came off a minute before. Yes.
Yes, and that's the opposite of it. That's when that was the birth of the Madranda, and you knew you were okay. You knew everything was gonna be okay. I'm gonna share one real quick now from Adam Tamboreo, who is one of our chat members with us right now, and he shared this with me on Twitter early a few days ago, and he's got two memories for us. I'm just going to go with the first one right now. He goes, "Hey, Andrew Barnicle," which is his buddy on Twitter, who I'm going to also give a shout out right here, who was a great sport with this tweet. "Remember when I captained King Jack Elliott on a double game week and he scored 3 goals in 2 games?" And Andrew was not very happy about that. So I did some research, and I think it might have been a little bit of a misremembrance, or it could have just been a score adjustment. I didn't find a game where Jack Elliott had 3 goals in 2 games, but I did find a game in August of 2018 where Jack Elliott had 2 goals in a single game of a double game week against the New England Revolution, and I think that's got to be it. So the 2018 match against New England in August was just gold for Adam, and it's all because of those head-to-heads, like you were talking about there, Mike. Those head-to-head matches, or at least playing in leagues with your buddies. That's where it all comes in.
My other big memory is on the losing end of a head-to-head match. I don't know if you want to do that one now or we can save it.
I will get that one in a second. Blaine, let's go with one of your memories.
I mean, just the invention of the Madranda, being a Kansas City homer, cheap guy that I had a lot of faith in. I mean, he was in my roster for most of that time while he was pulling that off. And it was just one of those waves that I got on early. I got on for the first week. We helped coin the phrase on the show for the Madranda and just rode that as long as we could. And that was a huge one for me, just being the homer I am. And just fun times just to see one of the nicest players I've gotten the chance to be around. Just see his name go up in lights for fantasy was huge for me. And just I'll never forget that whole scenario because it was just so random. Defender playing as a winger and getting decent points, but getting subbed out before the team lost a clean sheet over and over and over again. And that's when I was playing draft, I was loading up on Kansas City defenders anyway, but to see the clean sheet saved by getting subbed out was just priceless.
Because you're a homer, right?
Yeah, it's partially because I'm a homer.
Partially because you're a homer. I think it's completely because you're a homer. So I'm going to share a moment didn't actually happen to me, but this happened. I'm pretty sure this happened to Travis when he was still on the show, and he is one of the original MLS Fantasy Insider hosts, and so was big into the fantasy game several years ago. And he lives very close to the stadium, so he's in Houston. So he is at all the Houston games going on. So he's always there, a big personality there. And back in the day, Houston was really good at integrating or connecting fantasy to how it was doing its fan outreach. And so from what Travis would tell me is that if you won in their fantasy league that week, they would get people special prizes at the stadium. So like you could get better seats, or mostly it was you'd get to go behind the scenes and meet a player at the locker room after the game or at halftime or something like that. And so because Travis was very in the fantasy scene, he was often the number one scorer in the sport in the Houston. That's like a horrible thing. You got your Sporting Kansas City background there, Blaine. It's just in my face. But he would often win first place, and so he would get these little prizes. And so I remember he did talk about having great seats often, but also one time he mentioned he got to go back behind, and I think he got to meet Giles Barnes. And that was just a really cool moment. So I'm going to share that for Travis. I called him out on Twitter, and he didn't participate. So I'm just going to share that moment that I remember Travis talking about is just the awesome prizes or connections that some teams used to give for playing fantasy. So that is a very good one.
Well, I should probably mention I got to meet Travis because, I mean, Houston's one of the closest stadiums to me. So I've gone to 2 Houston Dynamo games, and both times I talked to Travis and was like, hey, I'm coming in. You want to hang out and grab beers, before or after the match. Getting to meet him was cool. It was also kind of nice to have a place to crash. We'll let the traffic go out and hang out with him. So yeah, I mean, definitely meeting some people is probably up there in fantasy moments for me, and meeting Travis was really cool.
So you had another one, Mike, you were going to share with Blaine. You can go ahead and share that one now with your head-to-head.
Okay, so my agony head-to-head was I was in a head-to-head with Simon. And I remember on the podcast, he and I had an argument about who to captain during this double game week for the Montreal Impact. Ignacio Piatti or Didier Drogba. Their midweek game was against New York City. It was a 0-0 game. New York City had all the chances, but I guess it was Bush was just not letting it go in, or New York City was fluffing its lines. I don't remember what it was. Then there was a BS foul call at like 91 or 88 minutes. Didier Drogba, because it's Yankee Stadium, it's, even though it's like a mile from the box, it's still really, really close. Didier Drogba has a beautiful free kick. It goes in. I immediately get a tweet from Simon being like, I captained the right guy. And I just threw the phone. And because we had the argument on the podcast and we were in head-to-head that week, I'm like, my team just lost. My fantasy team just lost. I hate everything.
That's a good one. So one that I'm going to share. This is a throwback for me. Actually, you know what? I'm going to wait because we're talking about some rough moments that people experience. So I'm going to share this moment that Steve McPherson sent in on Twitter. Steve has been on the show at least once, maybe twice, and he does some fantasy content up in Minnesota. So he and Jamie Watson do some stuff. So if not, check those guys out on Twitter. But Steve sent this one in because I knew he would have something, and he said, I'll tell you what. Actually, just said I tell you, but I added the what there. I tell you, nothing is going to top the time that Jamie Watson not only started, but captained Corey Burke the week he was effectively deported in 2019. Now this I looked it back up. I looked it up, and this came in April 20th. So April 20th, 2019 was the last game that Corey Burke played in MLS, and it was against Montreal, and he got a goal. He played like 70 minutes, got a goal, so I'm sure that was a great game. That was, I believe he got 2 goals in 3 games during that stretch right there, so I can see why you'd be like, wow,
yeah, we were talking about
hot.
It as a fantasy option.
Yeah, I could see why you'd think that. But that was it. He was never in the team after that. And what this has reminded me of that I want to reminisce some with you guys is how crucial it's been in fantasy to find players like that. At least this was especially during the time before we had the midseason adjustment. But finding those players who got into the game and then disappeared were switcheroo gold. Switcheroo gold. So did you guys ever luck out and get those players?
Oh, disappeared. I'm trying to...
So I will say I can't remember their names
There's
because
been a few. So most of the time, at least with unlimited transfers, I've used New York City players. I'm like, I know they're in USL. I know they're never going to see the light of
There you
day.
go. Exactly. That's usually what it was, and I can't remember some names either. But there have been several times when I've found a couple of players at the beginning of a season who, and this was a bit more relevant when we had limited transfers, not so much with the unlimited. But when we had limited transfers, no matter what the quantity was, and I'd find a one or two guys, and sometimes you just dumb luck on into it, and they're usually USL guys who got called up to do something, some trials or something, got into the team, and then poof, just disappeared. Their names are long forgotten, but their contributions to our fantasy team will live on forever. Forever. Blaine?
Just fun one that we have, because I don't remember a lot of my scores. I don't really have the standout head-to-head wins or the losses that I can remember. I've always felt like the underdog.
Really, because I feel like I can remember a loss from you.
Um,
I was gonna bring up.
I've lost to everybody, though. I mean, I've lost to Weeby, so.
Oh, well, that's the one I'm talking about.
Yeah. So
which isn't that? That's like my only. I mean, maybe it's my only fantasy moment from 2020. But if it is, it's worth it because you lost to Weeby.
Yeah.
Which means you automatically are going to get the wood spoon for our league with Weeby's face.
That's right. Etched into it. Yeah. The home long-haired Weeby face.
Oh yeah, that would be
Quarantine Weeby. Quarantweeby.
I'm glad we don't do a tattoo bet around the head-to-head league, because Quarantine Weeby tattooed on somebody would probably be a little too much.
I mean, look, if you go in with that Andy Reid mustache and the Quarantine Weeby tattoo, you're just going to clean up. Everyone's just be like, gosh. I'm not going to mess with that guy.
Oh, man.
Because if that guy's willing to do that to his body, I don't know what he wants to do to me.
Yeah. The one I've got, a long-running gag that we've had that we finally got an answer when we went to unlimited transfers, but the triple switcheroo. And how polarizing that whole idea was, that you could run a triple switcheroo or not. And before unlimited transfers, it was actually impossible to run a triple switcheroo. Unlimited transfers fixed the rulings. You can run a triple switcheroo now because you can put 3 guys on your bench, and you can sub them in, but you can put 3 other players in to fill for them, so you can run 3 separate switcheroos from your bench. In the old system, you could do 3 guys on your bench and 2 guys in the starting lineup, and it was essentially a 3 players into 2 spot auto roo, and you're not making any changes. But the definitive answer when we got to the new system, you could finally run a triple switcheroo, but it took going to unlimited transfers, and there were certain people who swore that you could do it in the old system beforehand. And it was fun to just go back and forth on that one. But when the rules changed and we could finally tell them, now you can officially run a triple switcheroo, and could prove them wrong, it was worth it.
You seem to have some opinions of that, Mike.
Yeah, I think it's a double switcheroo with 3 players, because it's still only 2 spots you can do.
No, you can do it with 3. You can do it with 3 spots now. You have 3 subs. You can fill all 3 sub spots with guys in the first match. You can put 3 scrubs in. And if you don't like any of those first 3 scores, you can replace all 3 scrubs with somebody else. Triple switcheroo. Because
that's different than what's usually done.
So I think I'm going to step in. I agree with Mike, because what you're talking about is if you don't like the 3 scores on your bench, you go and change 3 players in your field.
Yes.
And I don't call that a switcheroo. I call that utilizing the unlimited transfers with rolling lockouts. That's not a switcheroo. To me, the switcheroo is having the guy come off your bench. You like him, you take somebody out of your team to force that switch. If you do 3 people, you should have just started those players. So you're not switching anything, you're just forcing your 3 auto subs. But if you have 2 people, like Mike's talking about, the double switcheroo, you're getting the 2 highest of the 3 people to take that advantage. So I still don't believe in the triple switcheroo.
That's an auto roo if you put 3 on your bench and you only take the top 2 scores, because you're just letting the auto subs fix it for you. Okay, so reverse it. Say you put 3 moderate price players on your bench, just in case, because you've got the extra money, especially this year, and then you throw in 3 really good guys out there, but all 3 of your guys on the bench hit, even though you may have a Valeri and a Polito this year. that you like, but you're like, well, all 3 of my bench guys hit early. Let's go drop these guys off the field. You can still do it.
No, you're just doing auto transfers. The switcheroo depends upon having either 2 players on your bench for 1 spot or 3 players for 2 spots, because you're trying to switch in the highest ones.
Auto-roo.
But you're forcing it. It's the auto-roo when you just leave it alone. It's the switcheroo when you force the change. But if you do it with 3 people, you're just doing the auto sub.
But if all 3 of them come in, it's a triple. You've got it. You can work it so all 3 of them come in, which makes it the triple.
It's not a switcheroo though.
Yeah, it is.
You're just subbing in 3 guys whose points you've seen.
Yeah, that's the point of the switcheroo.
Mike?
Yeah, I mean, I agree with you, Reed. I mean, you're switching in people, and also I think the mechanics usually mess with this, because I mean, in practicality, it's usually 2 defenders and 1 other player. For me, it's usually, I mean, mostly a forward. And so you're having to choose, and so especially there's a switch option of you're picking between one of the defenders. And I mean, that ends up being an auto-roo. I mean, I think ultimately most of this comes down to the auto-roo has generally taken place more prominence over the switcheroo, with the way the transfers are now. I mean, especially in years past, you didn't have the money to do the switcheroo, but you could do the auto-roo and the keeper-roo.
Oh, talking about your beard. Shannon thinks that's just semantics is all it comes down to, and then otherwise people are talking about Mike's beard, how he has a little bit of time left to catch up to Blaine.
I do, although I think Blaine, maybe Blaine did this more. I don't know how long Blaine's been growing it out, but it seemed like last week he was Andy Reid, and now he's got a beard again. So I think I have to submit to Blaine's beard superiority.
So I just posted it in chat. Other than the mustache, I shaved more recently than Mike did. Last week I did trim up the mustache and got rid of all the extra length on it to kind of blend in a little bit better.
He's bragging. He's bragging right now. So no, this is the argument for the ages. I mean, forget your politics, forget your religion, whatever. It's all about.
Jason? We need to get him on here for
he's looking at stars. I mean, he's got a family and he's got a job and he's got a telescope. Which, by the way,
he's got a drone with a telescope.
If you haven't looked at Jay's pictures from his telescope, it's pretty sweet. I mean, it's pretty sweet.
Yeah,
we're gonna
go ask him and follow him on Instagram.
Instagram. You can't do it on Twitter. He's locked. But I mean, like, we're gonna make fun of him right now because it's just good Twitter banter. But I mean, it's actually pretty sweet. So he's gonna get us a picture of Mars.
Down the street from an RSL player now too, or something.
He used to.
Or used to.
No. So Guy Sanchez used to live next to. I forget who it was. Guy Sanchez lived in like the same apartment complex as a Timbers player, and then I think Jason did too. But like he moved in and then got traded. I don't know. It was something weird like that happened.
Wasn't it Luis Silva that he lived down the road from, and then Silva got traded? I don't remember.
He did get traded. Adam says he hopes the switcheroo argument is settled in Fantasy 4.0. We'll see. But yeah, this is it. This is your argument. Triple switcheroo or double switcheroo. Forget your politics. Forget your religion. Forget your ice cream flavors. Forget whatever. Who shot first? Any of that stuff. What color's the dress? Is it a double or a triple switcheroo? That's the next great battle in this country.
The gift that keeps on giving. I bring it up as something that I thought was settled, and here we are making more memories on it.
We will do that, Shannon. Next week we'll get Jason to send us some of his best telescope pictures, and we'll put that in our backgrounds for the Zoom. All right, I teased mine. One of my first fantasy years, I think I mentioned this before on the show, but this was in 2012, the time when MLS Fantasy was still letting you play during the Cup, and it just changed the number of, I mentioned this during our history lesson. It changed the number of players, the maximum number of players you could have from each team. And this was the quarterfinals of Sporting Kansas City versus Houston. And I decided, this was back in the day when Houston pretty much never gave up at home. They were like the Colorado Rapids of soccer back at that time, as far as just being rock solid home. And it was like that for like 2 years, and it was a huge disappointment to us when in the fantasy world, but you're like, yeah, give me that Houston guy, give me Tally Hall, give me these people. No, it did not work very long. But back then it was still going strong, and I decided I was going to go just all in with a 5-player Houston backline, and by golly, Houston won that game 2-0 at home against Sporting Kansas City. They went on to lose when they went away, but that was just expected. But they won 2-0, and I got in all of those bonus points from that Houston backline, and it shot me up in the ranks. And that year I finished 25th overall in the league, and I got myself a Sporting Kansas City jersey as the reward because I just felt like that was fitting because of that match. So I have that jersey that reminds me of that match that Houston won for me. I don't know why I didn't get a Houston one, but I just felt like getting the Sporting Kansas City one was funnier. And by golly, I think I was right. Let's go on to one from Ben Bear. I sent a message out to Weeby and them, and Ben responded. I mean, we know all of Weeby's moments revolve around him forgetting what it was and trying to remember the name of the intern who had his password last. But for Ben Bear, he sent one, and he said, how about every season when I, Ben Bear, had the most points and somehow Kevin Chrisman from MLS wins the playoff every time. So this is in their private MLS league, and Ben apparently just has horrible luck when it comes to head-to-heads. And this is one of the reasons why I love head-to-heads so much is Ben is crying, QQ, right here. He has the most points. Clearly he's the better fantasy player, but his matchups did not work, and he is getting beat every year apparently in the little MLS employees league right there, and that is horrible. I feel his pain. I know that happened often when Phil was still playing with us. He would be doing some great points and would oftentimes drop. And we've seen this a lot in the MLSFI head-to-head league as well. Do you guys have some memories of times when you were clearly winning in points but not so much in your head-to-head scores?
The Tacos League is like that for me. I joined a Cascadia League and came in and cleaned house. I was really proud of that stat for a long time. But as the competition level got a little better, I would always be up there number 1 or 2 with Jessup Gage. RJ Gage, been on the show a few times. He and I would just dominate that league points-wise. But somewhere along the line, we would pick up one stupid loss along the way, or we'd get paired up against one of the other contenders, and we'd take one loss throughout the season. We'd never be able to make up that ground on the other guy or one of the other players. And it didn't matter how much we dominated that league. We take one bad head-to-head loss because of the way the schedule comes out, and we're done.
I was just checking right now on Instagram to see if I could find some pictures that Jason's taken, and he's lied to us unless he has another Instagram account, because these are like all pictures of him and his family.
Look at his top. It's It's backyard. He has a personal account and then a space one.
There it is. Yes. So check out at Astro Backyard Utah, ASTROBACKYARDUTAH, to find out Jason's pretty sweet. Ooh, that's the moon. Pretty sweet images right there. Little thing I learned, apparently at some point in time, some company was trying to get funding so they could build a giant advertising billboard in space that would be roughly the same size and brightness as the moon. They did not get funding, and now there is a law against that. So there's your random non-MLS piece of knowledge today, inspired by Jason's pictures.
I have some other random moon-related knowledge, but I don't know if we want to keep going down that road.
We can share that. We'll get back to that one. Do you have another fun moment? If not, I've got some more from our listeners.
Let's go to the listeners.
All right. To the listeners. This one comes from Ian Pritchard, who was on the show a couple of weeks ago. And so this is not an MLSFI, or MLS Fantasy moment, but I think it's fitting because Ian was on to talk about the homebrew fantasy leagues, and so he wanted to share a homebrew fantasy moment, and I thought that was very appropriate. And it comes from the MLS Show League that we participate in, that he talked about, and this was against another Mike from Houston who participates in that league, and I think this does catch a pretty classic fantasy success and frustration that a lot of us will have, I'm sure. So he said it was the finals in April of 2017, and Mike from the other Houston fan, not our Mike here, needed to make 20 points with them both having a game left. So they only had 1 point to 1 game left, and he needed 20 points to secure the win. And he crushed his pick. He had Shuttleworth going off with the 1-0 win over Colorado, and that gave him 2.5 points more than what Ian had. So that clean sheet helped other Mike beat Ian in their little match there in the show league. That was until MLS had their points refresh and decided on the update day to give Agudelo a goal, which was originally awarded as an own goal, swinging the match toward Ian, who had Agudelo as his player in that match. So how many times, guys, and people in chat and people listening right now, have you had a fantasy score and thought, hot dang, hot dog, hot MLS, and then you come back the next day and you go, where did my points go? Why am I now losing? Why am I now tied? I know I've had several times when I'm like, yes, I got that extra point I needed to beat insert player from head-to-head league, and then they come back and be like, I'm either losing by 1 or a draw. Mostly it's been I've lost by 1 point, which has been the bigger one.
I mean, I find the more surprising thing there is having Agudelo and having him be a difference maker to get you a win in fantasy.
Oh, I remember that. I think there was, it might have been like an international break or something, because for some reason everyone had New England players. I remember it was something, or maybe it was just because Colorado was that bad. So everyone piled on against Colorado. But I remember that one specifically because the best part about it was they changed it Monday or Tuesday. And there was like a huge fight.
Change?
Yeah, so it was late change. So it didn't count for fantasy for our scoring, but it changed the price rise for Agudelo in our game. But because Show League is different, they could actually count it. And so they reran the numbers. So I think poor Sean had to do like 2 checks because he did an initial check and then a recheck because the score was so close. And then when it changed, he then did it twice.
That is rough. That's a Blaine, you have another one to share?
Yeah, go back old school a little bit, and this one ties in both MLS Fantasy and my draft league. It was 2015, and everybody was doing crazy things. We were watching different things. I remember grabbing Kyle Lauren so early on that year, about 2-3 weeks before he really went off, and that was his 17 goal performance. And I think 2015 was still in the old transfer system, so it wasn't a player you were just going to get and drop every couple of weeks as you see it. So I rode this Kyle Lauren high for a 17 goal rookie campaign in MLS Fantasy, but I snagged him so early in the draft league, about 3 weeks in, when he was starting to really surge up the top of the list. Everybody in my league started trying to make claims for him, only to find out I had him. And it was one of those random, I think he was a 4.0 or 4.5 when he started that season in the old price structure. And there wasn't as much change at that point either, so he stayed really cheap throughout the entire season as well. It was just one of those perfect storms for a guy who ended up giving you massive points at a really good price. And then I added on that I've grabbed him in the draft league, and that was just one of those. I'd want to run the numbers on it, but I think points per value, that has to be one of the best all-time seasons by any single player for their cost throughout the year.
So another one for me was Daigo Kobayashi, and I am looking up the exact year right now. But I remember the first season that he was in MLS, and give me just a second. Points if you guys know this right now. I forgot to look it up. It was 2015. I beat you right there. So in 2015, I was checking out a lot of the preseason stuff, and I don't do that as much anymore for the scores because I don't find that it's necessarily as great, or I'll just check the last couple of weeks or last couple of games of preseason. I was looking at every preseason game back then to really try to see if I could find a diamond in the rough. And I had an eye on Daigo Kobayashi during that time, and he was someone who really stood out to me. And so I am going through. That can't be right. Maybe it wasn't the 2015 season. Maybe it was 2016 season. Let me check real quick. Anyway, what happened was I was watching him as he was 15 or 16, and yes, there it was. It was 2016. He had played in 15. I had watched him in 16, and I was like, he's really getting it right now. He's really on a great run. And so, just off a random thing, I was like, I'm going to put Daigo Kobayashi in my starting lineup for the first round of fantasy. And I did that, and he did not start. And I was like, well, son of a gun, this is a horrible way to start the season. Week 1, having Daigo Kobayashi, after he was tearing it up during preseason. I want to think he was getting, for the last few games where he got like 3 goals and 4 assists, something like that. He was on set plays and do all this kind of stuff. And I was like, man, he's gonna do it. And it was Houston away, and they were horrible when they were away, awesome when they were at home. And he comes on 5 minutes, and I'm like, okay, well, great. Now he's come on for 5 minutes, and that's blown any kind of score and gets a goal. And I was like, there it is, right there. And I felt just so justified in everything that I was doing for Daigo Kobayashi to give me that points. I don't remember how well I finished that round, but I just remember that I had Kobayashi, and that was like, yes, that made me feel so good for finding that little player. I think I may have actually tipped him in an article as well, and so that was like the double pat on the back right there, having tipped him and have him do well. But that does get me to Adam's second. I told you he sent 2 second memory that he put on there, and this is just a general memory overall, and I think and it's about failed switcheroos. And he says, other than the handful of 4.0 scrubs that I put in switcheroos that decided to make their MLS debut that week in the 89th minute, destroying all of my switcheroos. I think that is a fantasy memory or big moment in fantasy that we can all relate to, is having somebody on your bench who you are so sure would not play sub in and destroy your switcheroo, be it a double or a triple, destroying your switcheroo, and it's just gone. That's why I try to find guys who are injured or aren't in the league anymore. Mm-hmm. Any fun memories for you guys about that? And by fun, I mean horrible.
Oh, there was a few times last year where I was like busy, and I think it was like a Timbers player. I don't remember who it is, but I was like, I'm not playing a Timbers player, and he came in and it was massive. It was like a double-digit point loss as a result. It's always the Timbers that I get screwed up because they always have the late games.
There was a while there too, Mike, where we didn't need to pick with David Villa if you picked David Villa.
I mean, that's true. Well, I mean, it was both, because if you picked David Villa, it was okay. If I picked David Villa, it's not okay.
Adam just added that he's sure that 50% of the time that he would have a guy who was listed as injured, but then would come on and play anyway. That's a special rant for you, Mike, right there.
So,
but I have a special absent story if you want to go there now.
One thing on the scrubs playing, I got burned so early on in my fantasy time that I am super paranoid about it. And so I watch lineups for my late scrubs, and if I see them even on the bench, I start making changes. Like but it only took getting burned once or twice. And I know I lost at least one game based on that. But I got super paranoid that I always make the change. Like, I will pay the extra $500,000 to make the change to make sure my scrub won't be playing at all in case there's an injury, because with my luck there will be an injury and my scrub will play.
And she's saying it's not an injury situation that I'm angry about. It's not an injury. She's saying, oh, this is some sort of undisclosed injury. I can handle undisclosed injury. I'm used to being lied to about undisclosed injuries. This is not an injury story.
Well, don't leave us waiting.
Y'all two will remember, this involves Robbie Keane and the Los Angeles Galaxy. And the PR person for the Los Angeles Galaxy, because this isn't going on MLSFI.com, I'm going to say it, Adam Serrano, who needs to burn in hell for this story.
Wow.
I asked him on Twitter like a week ago. So this was the scenario. This is Robbie Keane's last international match with Ireland. He was leaving. Ireland had 2 games that the first one was the last home game for Ireland, after which he was retiring. It was a big thing, big to do, blah, blah, blah. And I asked him if he was going to come back and be available for the next week. So, he's having like a match on Thursday. They have a double game week the next week. He answered me publicly on Twitter and said, yes, he will be back. I don't know if he'll start both games, but he will be available both games. He took both games off. Both games after. Just, I'm drunk in Ireland and I don't want to show up. Just couldn't be bothered. And when I asked Adam, like, hey, what happened? Why is he not in the lineup? I just got GIFs sent back at me. They were like, I don't know. Like, you work there. You can't go walk 2 cubicles over and be like, hey, why is Robbie Keane? Because I'm the PR guy and I should release accurate public information. Like, this dude could not care less that he had lied to the public and had given out inaccurate information, that people relied on him on his inaccurate information. He was just like, whatever. So whenever I start saying bad things about Adam Serrano and the Los Angeles Galaxy, that is where my hatred comes from. And I'd be like, and this was back before unlimited transfers, I think. So people had been bringing him in for a massive double game week for Galaxy, because especially Robbie Keane was huge back then, and it just torpedoed so many teams, including my own. I think the only thing that saved me was we got that lineup right before lock, and so if you were on Twitter and on your phone, you were able to bail. But I mean, it was a disaster.
I think Robbie Keane. I have a great history of missing hat tricks, but I think Robbie Keane might have been my first one that I actually had, and I know there was one point when I think right when Mike McGee went to LA, he had a great game, and I had Mike McGee on my team as well that week. I think he got 2 assists or something, but I had Mike McGee as well. And hold on just a second, you guys vamp. I have to go let my dog in because she is scratching at the door, even though my on-air sign is on.
I mean, very, very rude of that dog. Yeah, I mean, oh man, I mean, we got burned so many times with the transfers. I mean, it's, especially before unlimited transfers, like you had to make it in that hour. I do have a lot of memories of just the panic in that hour, especially on a double game week Wednesday. It's usually 5 o'clock for me here in Louisiana, and just, oh my gosh, that person's not in the lineup. Why is he not in the lineup? I have no idea. Is he hurt? Am I going to bring him in? And just Discord, Fantasy Boss chat, whatever, just trying to figure out what the hell is going on. And that was a classic example, because everyone in the Discord chat started adding me, being like, MLS injury news at Mike the Tiger. Why is Robbie Keane not in here? Is this? I don't know. I was lied to.
That's a memory I'm glad I don't have to make anymore. Mike's got it right. Like that hour, because Central Time, 7 o'clock kickoff means 6 o'clock our time. So we have an hour, and that's right when I was getting off work. I remember a few times that I would actually pull over on the shoulder of the highway because I was sitting there refreshing Twitter on my way home looking for lineups, because my wife didn't want me to be really late getting home, and I couldn't just sit in the office for 30 minutes waiting to see a lineup. and I would pull over on the side of the highway and make my changes because I saw a lineup do something drastic that I had to fix it right then. And I knew if I went home, I wasn't going to make it in time to set my lineup.
Yeah, there's a Walmart near my house. That's my key. Like, if I had to pull over fantasy.
So I've got 3 from Skylar Redpath, who sent some of these in. I added him as well, and he was a great sport and sent some of these back in. So from one of the most prolific winners in fantasy history, we have 3 of his moments. We'll stagger these. First one, he takes it back to 2016 to the Houston Dynamo Fantasy Point Bonanza in their first game of the 2016 season. That was against the Colorado Rapids. He had Brian Ching captained, and he had Dwayne DeRosario on his team as well, and he also had Wade Barnett back in that day too. So for those of you who may not remember, that was a 5-2 beatdown provided by the Houston Dynamo against Colorado. Brian Ching got 4 of those goals, and Dwayne DeRosario logged an assist. I think he said 4 assists, but according to the official stats back then, he only got 1 of the assists. But he still got an assist, and Barrett got another one of the early assists as well. So he got 4 goals and 2 assists, and one of those 4 goals came from his captain. So fantasy, he tells us, talk about a massive fantasy point haul right there as a way to start the season. And he believes that it kickstarted his first ever top 5 finish. So that was where all of his success began right there. So wow, can you imagine that? Do you have a time when you've had a goal scorer who's gotten, I mean, a hat trick's hard enough to get. Have you ever guys had someone who's gotten more than 3 goals?
I think on a double game week I had a 4 once.
Yep, that could be see it. Oh, and Skylar's in 4 assists with Skylar. I'm looking at who scored. I'm looking at Transfer Market right here, and they say that it's Brian
that might not
Mullen.
count as a secondary assist.
Well, they didn't have secondary assists back then because that's a garbage stat. It says Brian Ching and Wade on the first one, Brian Ching and Brian Mullen on the second one, again on the third one, and then Brian and Dwayne on the fourth one. So I'm not seeing it, Skylar. But I mean, maybe the people who were doing the injury report were running the points back then. I don't know. That could be what it was. And maybe this is just modified for Opta, but he says check the box scores. I mean, maybe he did send me a box score. He did send me the box score. So I did not. I just looked at the who scored right there. That does remind me, in 2013, I was trying to see how big I could get my team value, and that was when we still had the EPL-based system, then a 0.1, 0.2, a 0.3 rise for your players based on the transfers. And this is like a horrible memory, but also a great memory. I was partnered with some people, with Brian Cullimore in particular, and we were working out, trying to do some stats work to figure out how the transfer algorithm was working and what the thresholds were for getting certain players. And I had this spreadsheet that he had helped worked up where you could do some scrapes and plug in some numbers and figure out if a player was going to change that week to know how to spend your 1 or 2 transfers. And in 2013, I did not finish in like the top 25 or wherever it was that I did in that one great year, but I had the highest team value of any player that season. I think it was either 125 or 127, which is like nothing now in the way the game works, but that was pretty wild back then. But it was in the upper 120s, and so that was a really great moment that I remember of just having a brag that means absolutely nothing because you get no points for having the most budget, but that was a real fun time. Let's see here. Let's get another one of Skylar's right now. Unless some of you all from chat want to share some more, post them right there. What about those of you who might have been in older goalers leagues or Mike, all those times your son beat you?
I mean, that was pretty awesome because I mean he was definitely into it the first half of last season. We ended up dropping off in the second half because there were so many double game weeks that it basically gave us like 1 day or 2, in order to get it done. And with homework softball practice and all that, and, fell by the wayside. But I mean, he loved it. It was so cool when he beat me that first time. I was like, the hell? No, not yet. Yeah, it's really weird when your son starts beating you at stuff like legit. Like especially like there's a Star Wars video game, Star Wars Battlefront, and I think he's better at it than I am, and I don't know how I feel about that.
So let's go to Skylar's second one. He said, when Skylar won the 2011 Grand Prize, Skylar, how many Grand Prizes have you won? When he won the 2011 Grand Prize, he had a big, sweet, it says here, he did really great late in the season. I messed up my copy paste here. And he was a big sweat. There we go. A big sweat late in the season where he was neck and neck with his closest competitor. He needed something out of his captain, Thierry Henry, whom his opponent did not have. That was always great when we had these head-to-head matches to go in and look when it would give you little previews of which which players had and hadn't played. I've been gaming too much over this quarantine. And to figure out where your advantage might be. That's always been fun. But he had Thierry Henry. His opponent did not have that. And the Red Bulls in their late game versus the Galaxy. So Skylar's opponent had some decent chances throughout the match. But then finally, Thierry Henry put away one with a breakaway goal in the 60th minute. And that just kissed off the far post. Skylar definitely is romanticizing this with these little excellent words. But I think I remember that goal. I think I remember that, how he just sort of slipped right in right there. And he was jumping around in his living room because that goal is what punched Skylar's ticket to be the VIP guest at the 2012 MLS All-Star Game. So I can just imagine. I've had some of those moments as well, but not with that much on the line right there. And then speaking of the 2012 All-Star Game, Skylar's third moment, and I think this is an absolute fantastic moment right there. He has to bring up when he met Wando. He was on the bus ride back from the post-game where they were celebrating in the hotel in Philadelphia, and Wando sat down in the seat right in front of him, and they talked soccer over ice-cold Budweiser. Not sponsored, but we're happy to take it. During the ride to the hotel, and he took the opportunity to thank him for what he was doing with his part to win the trip, and also talked about the NCAA time as being a Division II forward, which Skylar was also a forward in college, and thanked him for what it was to be just encouraging to see someone overcome the odds to become one of the most lethal goal scorers in MLS. Meeting players is always awesome, especially when they helped you win fantasy prizes right there. For me, it's definitely having Quincy come on to the show in the first season of Fantasy Insider. And I think for a lot of you listening, those of you who were with us last week, having Quincy in chat interact with some of you guys, I really saw some people and saw some posts on Twitter where people found that was really fun. So you've had a similar experience right there. Do you guys have moments?
Yeah. I just want to say I wish MLS had pushed more of the winner stories, because having cool prizes and having, stories from the winners, that could be a great article that, great thing to publish to attract people like, hey, I want to sit in a bus and drink beer with Wondolowski. Who doesn't? I would love Wondolowski. I don't care if he won me anything or not. I'm not a D2 forward. I just think drinking beer with Wando would be great. I could share the stories about how, the guy who hated him the most in Show League then was forced to play him. And now people send him Wondolowski jerseys. But I mean, yeah, I wish MLS would publish stories of winning and have prizes that were conducive to having great. Oh my gosh, I won this! I got to do this. This was so cool. I had this great experience. Thanks, MLS Fantasy.
No, these moments are great, and I think that's what a lot of us really play. I thought you had her upside down for a second, Blaine. I think that's what a lot of us really play for us to have some of this, and that's what makes it fun. Is I always encourage people to do this every year, and it's not just about getting the highest score. Like this year, you could be in the top 50 multiple times and still have a chance to make the Champions League. So that's cool. That's definitely a moment you can build up to, is how you were able to have that run that got you to the top 50 to make the Champions League. That's a great thing. But playing in your head-to-heads, playing for whatever weird thing you want to do, the people who do keeper leagues or the people who do the FPL style fantasy trading, they organize it through the fantasy system, like all that kind of stuff is fun, and so it builds your fantasy moments that you get to remember going forward. And I'm pretty bad about, these are just some of the ones that really just stand out in my head, because it's hard sometimes with all these things that happen. Some of these moments just bleed together. But I do remember the night I was playing bar trivia at a local place near me, and Eric Winalda called me, and he had seen some of the stuff with fantasy, and he was calling to that was when I first got invited to come onto one of the Sirius XM shows. And so like getting a phone call, getting an email so it was like, it wasn't like out of the blue, like he had emailed me and that kind of stuff, and so I gave the numbers. But like to actually get a phone call from somebody like that was just incredibly wild moment, and it was because of fantasy that stuff happened. So that's been a fun memory as well that I get to share. And it was actually super fun because he followed me on Twitter, and I went to I think it was US versus Guatemala up in Columbus, and I saw someone with an Eric Winalda jersey, and I was like, hey, that's awesome, let me get a picture of that. And the guy was like, all right, and he gave me a weird look, and I was like, no, I'm friends with Winalda on Twitter, so I'll tag him. And so sure enough, yeah, I tagged him, and he responded back to him. The guy was like, whoa. So I was like, yep, I'm a nobody still, but I know Eric Winalda, so I just made your day. That was really fun.
Reed, I had one more while we're on it.
Give it. Yeah, we're winding down.
Since I've got the little one here, let's go back to 2017, and this isn't necessarily a fantasy moment. It's more of just a community moment. That I was sitting in a hospital room in the NICU with Lily, who you can see how big she is now.
And she muted you, Blaine. she's so big that she's unplugged you. There you go. You're back.
You're back.
Yeah. What I was saying, she was born early and small, and just being part of this community and this podcast and everything was just a little bit of normalcy for me. I don't know who in the community will remember it, but I remember saying, I'm coming to you live from Lily's hospital room right now. And I was sitting there on my phone in the hospital room, sometimes with Lily laying on me doing this show. And it's just, here she is now picking my captains for me when I remember to let her pick, because she's better at picking captains than I am. But here she is now, but she was this community was so helpful through that time. And I think everybody's got those memories of when they first joined a bigger community for fantasy and really got involved and got to know people. And I know it's been a highlight for mine, and I've got a lot of really good memories, but I'm sure everybody here has memories of being part of the community and chat and either Discord or Twitter or Reddit, or, just the ones that show up here every week.
Well, that's all that I have as far as my moments. I've gone through all of the moments that were sent to me. Let me check Twitter real quick. Let's see here. Backseat Manager, a piece of MLS fantasy history here. This game is the origin of Dare to Opara. Oh, we should have. That could have been one in contention for our. Mount Rushmore. Yeah, Ike Opara coming in and getting a header in Sporting Kansas City versus New York City FC back in 2017. Yeah, Dare to Opara. Hashtag Dare to insert player's name. That started with Ike Opara right there. And it's usually defender focused, of when you're being so daring that you're going to go with a defender as your captain, which Adam actually did successfully as well. We already mentioned. But yeah, Dare to Opara, that's a good one. That is a good one. Backseat Manager used to do some fantasy stuff as well. And I met him when I went to Colorado to see the MLS All-Star game when they played against Tottenham. So that was a fun little time right there. All right, well, that's all I had. Do you guys have anything else before we wind down? Otherwise, I'm just going to...
That's it.
Well, everyone, we've come to that time. We did very well at sticking closer to that 1 hour mark this week, as we joked about at the beginning of the show. MLS games are going to be gone for about another month at least. What's that comeback date, Mike?
I think I don't
Sixth or
remember
eighth.
if they have it official.
Last I heard was June 8th.
June
is the
8th.
earliest.
Yeah.
So we're going to be doing these suspension episodes for at least another month. So send us your ideas. Like I said, our final episode, once we get the confirmation of games coming back, will be the all-time greatest MLS fantasy lineup. So we'll take points, MLS 3.0, MLS Fantasy 3.0, and try to build the best team that we have based on the top point scorers from there. So I'll try to give a list of the top point scorers at that point, but then also clearly defenders don't make it into that list, so we'll have to do some adjustments to get the best team with defenders and keepers right there. But so that's going to be our final episode, but we need some more content between there. And thank you so much, everyone who's been suggesting content so far. I hope you guys have liked what we've been doing, but we want to have more ideas, want to talk about what you all want, and we can branch a little bit off of soccer if you guys would like to do that, but send it to us on Twitter, send them to me in the email, whatever you would like to do. Just let us know what you want to hear, and we're happy to put that content together for you. Mike has pulled off a game of Villainous, so if you guys would like to have us play a board game live, we can definitely do that. That would be interesting. I mean, it's not really too hard. But we could play some board games live. We could always do Star Wars talk, or we could do anything that you guys would like. So just hit us up. Let us know what you would like. Anything you guys want to plug before we go?
Nope.
All right. Well, thank you everyone for joining us. Be sure to be safe at home and stay healthy at home. Stay safe during this time, and we will get through this together. So thank you tonight, and good luck.